40% of the volume from my mic is going straight back into my ears.
So you're hearing yourself speak in your own head, but at the same latency
at the exact
as
same
you
time. Yeah, which is the
Ah.
incredibly important part, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
why
yeah.
you can't go via digital. Like you can't go through a DAC. It's got to be in the headset side. And it makes
Okay.
such a difference to like, if you want to hear other things in the room, or if you want to just like have a feeling like you're not actually wearing headphones, because like they do muffle quite a bit, like they've got nice
Interesting.
like things. But if you want to actually like turn it off and make it feel like you're not wearing any headphones at all, you just up the side tone and you can hear other people back in through your ears really loud. So you can both be listening to really loud music or whatever and also hear yourself.
Yeah.
An
Okay.
incredibly good
We are
way
now
of
streaming. We are now streaming live.
okay.
So now we wait
Cool.
for people to arrive.
Just like that, just like we're live.
Just like that, yeah. It's how I roll.
No audio problems. I like it. Wogan, you should really pick up some hints here, huh?
Yeah, just YOLO at 5 minutes into the slot. You know, no prep offline, no pre-stream, no nothing. No, we just
No,
YOLO.
this is like a real live meetup.
That's actually true. You don't prep. You don't
No.
prep like this in real life. No.
No, you pitch up, you have some chats, you maybe have a drink, you talk to some people. I don't know. So yeah. So while we wait for people to come online, I don't know if I've never done this before, so I don't know how to check. There are 4 people currently watching. Whether they're actually paying attention or not, I don't know. But I first of all would like to apologize for running a bit late. My wife and I went to go and pick up a new member of our family this evening, a new doggy. And I was expecting the traffic to be not as bad based on, you know, COVID and staying at home. And apparently everybody's gone back to work and the traffic was terrible.
Outstanding. Let me just.
Do you have any photos of the cute doggo?
No, we've literally just got said cute doggo, so we're busy in the process of taking photos. My wife's the one that takes all the snaps. I tend to not use my phone for much more than just taking phone calls. Cool. So we've got a few people online. I think everybody that can watch the stream is watching the stream. So while people slowly join us, let me introduce myself. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Jonathan. Myself and Nick are currently the 2 co-organizers of the Cape Town PHP meetup. And tonight we're joined by Mr. Wogan May and Mr. John Roux. And I must apologize, John, I've been calling you in my personal head for some reason. I've been calling you Johan for the longest time. I don't know why.
I really don't mind.
So chaps, while everybody's sort of slowly coming in, maybe if you would like to, I'll start with, I've got Wogan first on my list and then John. So maybe Wogan, if you'd like to start by just giving us a brief introduction of who you are, what you do, where you're from, and what you're drinking tonight.
Okay, parrots, and coffee. Next. No. All right, so who I am. I am a Laravel developer, have been for quite a few years. Been a developer for over 10 years now, double digits. At the moment, I run my own small business doing business systems in Laravel. I can't remember when I started doing it, pretty much like all my life. Where I am, based in Somerset West, the glorious independent republic of the Helderberg. You know, if I keep saying it, maybe it'll happen. Yeah, what I am drinking tonight is legitimately just coffee.
Cool. John, go for it.
I'm John. John, Johan, Jonathan, whatever you want to call me. I think I actually get called by my actual name less than other names, so whatever. I'm a PHP Laravel DevOps guy. As of the start of this year, I've gone into full-time freelance, which has been quite exciting. Before that, I've pretty much got just over 7 years experience working in PHP, Magento, Magento 1, and Laravel specifically. A lot of AWS work as well, tossed in there. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
Cool. So for those of you who don't know why we're here this evening.
Sorry, I left out my important thing.
Yeah.
I'm drinking tea.
You're drinking tea? Oh, okay. That's a whole conversation on itself.
Yeah.
What kind of tea?
Just normal 5 Roses Ceylon tea, hey?
Nice.
The staple.
The staple. Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to I'm a very okay. So first of all, if you hear that beep, that's the alarm system door opening and closing. So it beeps every time. So I apologize in advance. Wogan also mentioned that my mic apparently isn't all that great. I apologize for that. I'm on my laptop. I don't have my mic with me. So hopefully everybody can hear.
Yeah, it's way better now when you brought the volume down. It sounded less like one of those memes where they like amplify the volume to like this crazy like clipping distortion levels. It sounds great now, John, compared
Okay,
to
awesome.
the start.
I think the problem was I literally just as I got home, flipped open my laptop, fired up Zoom, didn't do any settings or anything, and just went go. So the computer's obviously sorted itself out. So for those of you who don't know, the reason we're here this evening is that Wogan and John kind of kicked off something a little while back, which I think is very, very interesting. And I don't want to go too much into what it is. I mean, the title kind of gives itself away. But I'd like to give you chaps the opportunity to kind of talk about what it is and what it's all about. So as far as I remember, Wogan, you were the first one to start talking about this, or was it John? Or maybe you want to give us a bit of background about where this idea of Laravel South Africa came from.
Okay, I should start by saying that my memory sucks, and it's been getting worse since I've moved out of being a full-time dev into like being a part manager. I didn't realize how bad it was, and I apologize to all managers that have to hold like 100 things in their head at once. Johan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I was technically the one who started it, and I know this because I registered the domain, but it was literally just like a half-baked idea until we actually started fleshing it out a bit more.
Yeah, I would definitely
yeah.
say you're the instigator.
Yes, I will take credit for instigation, but not necessarily for the initial phase. That's absolutely been a team effort up until this point.
And what kind of, so for those of you who are here this evening, you'll know the title, What is Laravel South Africa? So that's kind of what we're talking about. What was the instigation for the idea? What were you sitting at home and going, oh, I want to start something up? Or what made you come to this point of going, I want to kick this off?
It's actually, it's been it's two kind of intersecting things. The one is that I really, really think community organizations bring a ton of value to the people in them, especially when it comes to programming languages and frameworks. And I really like the idea of there being a specific place, for Laravel, this framework, which ended up sort of underpinning my entire career. Like as of right now, Laravel is the predominant framework I work in. Plus, I think it's a really good framework. Having tried a bunch, I like it. And I like the idea of, helping people that want to learn more about it and become experienced in it, creating some kind of, space for that to happen. So that was like the original idea. And the very, very first iteration was actually thinking about it through the lens of training, like literally just delivering training. Because in the last few months, as I've started building out my business, I do that internally a lot, where I deliver like internal, like, Q&A style training sessions. But then it was actually after speaking to John that I realized, what, we can do something much more meaningful here, which is to kind of found and, expand an actual community of people that, can help each other. And that's where it is right now. Okay,
awesome. John, maybe you want to give us a bit of kind of background as to where you see yourself involved in all of this. I don't want to make this about me, asking Wogan questions all evening long, but maybe give us a bit of background as to how you got involved, what your goals are here.
Yeah, so I'm also a huge fan of community. Currently been doing freelance work since actually like December-ish. Apart from one client, every single one of my clients I've gotten through ZA Tech's like freelance platform, which is an open community thing like that. And like it's delivered such a massive amount of value to me. And I've realized, much like Wogan, that these communities have such a massive underpinning in both like initial value and then ongoing growth. Channels like our Laravel channel or like PHP, where there's some amazingly insightful individuals who know a ton about certain stuff and put everyone together. And much like the oldish IRC days, where you have a channel with a ton of really experienced peeps who don't have much time, you ask a question every now and again, and you get some really valuable feedback. So like the value of communities and the value that gives you, both in terms of a junior or a mid or a senior leveling up their career, and also from a mentoring position of you helping out other people, but it often ends up being more of a peer-to-peer relationship, where like I might know certain things and you might know other things. You ask a question about that thing and people reciprocate. And it's a really amazing thing where people can learn and grow a huge amount together. But if you don't have an underlying platform for that to happen, it's incredibly hard to happen. Like it won't happen. Like before ZA Tech happened, there were almost no large-scale South African tech communities. And yeah, so I just found that like we really need more specific things. And building those communities can help a huge amount. I mean, obviously ZA Tech is amazing, and I'm not going to pull away from that. But it'd be good for us to have our own more specific community as well, where we can do our own things and do a bit more like different things apart from just being a chat platform. There are a lot of other things we're wanting to look forward to and look at maybe building out better as things go.
Okay.
That's some
Awesome.
insights from my side, yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned ZA Tech quite a few times, and I like the fact that you mentioned that, because that kind of leads me into a question quite nicely. I discovered ZA Tech when I went freelance, and I was looking around to connect with other developers and kind of, you know, they say surround yourself with people more intelligent than you. And that was kind of my goal of getting involved there. And to me, at least in my sort of little bubble, ZA Tech is very much the Slack team and all the channels in there, and I can log on to any one of those channels. And there is a code of conduct. There is a GitHub repository which contains a code of conduct, and then not much else. Is Laravel South Africa going to be like that? Is it going to be different? Is it going to be include more things? Kind of what are the goals, long-term, short-term, that you have for Laravel South Africa?
I guess I can start with that one, John.
Yeah, claim.
Way more parrots and more red are the two fundamental. No.
What was it? More parrots and more red.
No limited emojis, right?
Yeah, I know. ZA Tech took away my parrots, and I've never been the same. No, so there's definitely a lot more thought that went into this, because Slack and communication tools like that, they're very good at creating places to ask people questions in real time. But if there's one criticism I have, and it's not ZA Tech, it's chat in general, information retention and discovery kind of sucks. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've answered freelancer tax questions the same way over and over again on ZA Tech. And so like that was one of the main things where, if you are, interested in Laravel, you're like kind of new to it, or you're trying to change frameworks and you need more information, the two kind of things that came up when we talked about it was, it's nice to have other South Africans, people that are in your towns, in your cities, that you can actually go talk to. You've got a sort of like a common culture, that you're actually in the same country. It's not, with all respect and admiration for the work that like the Netherlands and the US puts into creating these communities, it's not the same flavor as having like a South African community. So I thought that would be one thing we needed. But the other thing was, if you just join a channel and you have all these people that you don't know, and you don't know like how to really conduct yourself, and you just start asking questions, it can be pretty intimidating. And I've seen that feedback of that to that point quite a few times. And so with this, there's a special attention paid to, you're brand new to Laravel. Okay, there's some information you need, and you need to know who to talk to, and you need to know who you can trust, who has experience. So, one of the things we're looking at is a sort of profile/rank mechanism, maybe including badges, maybe including, like histories of the work that you've done, but sort of to create this place where, as a Laravel developer of some experience, you can, sort of deposit and share the stuff in a system designed for it, that we're not going to lose, valuable context 6 months up in a conversation thread. While also creating a place for people who are brand new to get the very first information they need and feel comfortable to actually explore the framework further. Because especially when you are new to something, and unless if you're able to just sort of blast right ahead, a lot of challenges can be quite intimidating up front. And that was the thing that we paid attention to. So I would say that is like the main difference between this and what we have on Slack at the moment. Okay,
awesome. So I would guess then that you're planning to put together some form of website, maybe some form of blog. I guess the question is obvious, but will this all be built on Laravel, or are you going to be using other technologies, or just out of interest sake, what have you had in mind for all of that?
Yeah, definitely other stuff as well. I think one of the main ideas is that we want Laravel to be the core of it. I think building something out in Django whilst we're at Laravel South Africa just doesn't make sense, nor would I want to. I like writing clean code. So,
Oof.
Oh, that's hard.
Hashtag shade. And with that,
so very much like I think all the more custom stuff we want to try and leave in specific Laravel. There will be some things like discussion boards and whatnot, which it just doesn't make sense to rebuild wheels. And so for some sides, we'll definitely reuse open source stuff that exists. But yeah, I think the idea is that the core of it ideally should be Laravel specific.
Okay, cool. So this is I'm going to say this for those of you who are listening. I'm a terrible online meetup host. I was meant to send Wogan and John a bunch of questions that I plan to ask them sometime this week, and I just completely slipped my mind. So I might blindside them with some of these questions. And I'm going to say, the chaps, if you don't have an answer, you don't want to answer, feel free. I'm going to get sort of into the nitty gritty of it now. You know, you're starting up something which is based on a brand name that exists. So my first question is, and this is sort of for those who don't even know the answers to these kind of things, do you have permission, A, to use the Laravel name? And if you do, what was that process like?
cool. Yes, we do. I actually reached out to Taylor directly, who is the trademark holder for Laravel, and got written consent to use it. The process was I kind of just guessed what his email address would be and emailed him. And a couple of days later, I got a response where I explained that I'm trying to create a community site, and we really just want to use like the Laravel name and the color, for our logo. And he came back and said that's fine. So I've got that like as a PDF on the noteboard where we plan everything. It's a great question because, a lot of these open source projects, they'll have teams or committees or foundations whose job it is to kind of look after the usage of a brand. And I've got a great respect for that process in terms of, don't just rip something that you like and use it because you don't want people to do that to you. And I subscribe to the golden rule of do unto others. And, so on that basis, I did seek his approval. If he had said no, we would have not been so heavy on the Laravel, but we would definitely have continued with a community project of some sort. But yeah, it was really as easy as just emailing him directly and waiting a few days.
Awesome. And in terms of what you want to do, do you feel the need to ask him, we're going to do this, we want to do that? Is there any kind of sort of, what I'm thinking of is from my point of view as somebody who is involved with Laravel and who uses Laravel, I would like to see this be a very much a South African thing, but also be involved in the rest of the global community. Do you have any interaction with anybody else besides Taylor within the community? Or is this just something right now that you're focusing on locally, and maybe that's something you'll look at a later stage?
I can take that, unless John, if you want to, because we can alternate answers, I think. I'll take it. Okay, so look, long-term fact is Laravel is a global framework, right? It is not South Africa specific. So, in terms of community interaction, I have the people behind Forge and Envoya, the teams behind that, I've interacted with quite a lot because I do actually use most of the Laravel ecosystem in my work anyway. And the plan is, look, long-term, to set like a stretch goal, if I can call it that, I want to see Laracon South Africa happen. And for that to happen, I have to work directly with Laracon organizers for, all the other ones. And, making that part of that community and sort of ideally getting some senior Laravel people to come over as guests to present at a locally hosted Laracon. So with that in mind, it is absolutely a thing of we're going to seek out partnerships and like-minded people in the global ecosystem to also leverage their experience and their knowledge in helping local Laravel devs skill up.
Cool. Then again, this one might be one that you don't feel comfortable answering, so you're welcome to not answer it if you don't want to. But if you're going to be setting up a community, you're going to be doing some form of online platform or presence or whatever, which means, domains, it means possibly web hosting, it means possibly a paid Slack channel, which means you need to figure out how to pay for that. Is it something that you have thought about and have a plan, or is it something you're still kind of figuring out as you go? Could it possibly be a membership process, or kind of what are you thinking around those ideas?
For sure. So I think the main part of it is all going to be volunteer based. Like, I mean, currently Wogan and I aren't invoicing out for our hours for this or anything. And Nick as well, who's also quite involved. But so like most of the costs are going to be very minimal because of that. There will be obviously some costs like your hosting, your envoyer, your all the other stuff that we've got going on there with domains. Those costs at the moment, Amberstone Digital are going to be covering, as far as I know, Wogan's company. And we do have plans to look at getting the other sponsors on board. For now, they're the main sponsor, but we do have a whole company aspect of it as well, which both the idea is to get funding in for maintenance costs, running things and whatnot, as well as then to help put towards things like conferences or whatnot, so that we've actually got a budget that we can work from. Yeah, if that helps.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, Wogan, did you want to add something?
We've got unlimited budget, as far as I've heard.
Literally all the money. Well, look, to a large extent, because I have a Laravel infrastructure for my company, to kind of bolt this on is not a problem. But going forward, in terms of fundraising, it really depends on how far we get. So we have discussed internally forming, a Section 21 NPO, a company that people can actually donate to, and the goal would be to further the reach of Laravel in South Africa. We've talked about that, but it's a thing of, if there's real traction, we'll go for it. At the moment, and John can speak to this as well, I think, but for me anyway, there's still a little bit of uncertainty as to like how big this market actually is in South Africa and how many people will actually get involved. Regardless, we're going to produce something valuable. But if it becomes a thing of, there's thousands of people and they want to donate and the money starts coming in, there's immediately a step where we put in proper governance, a constitution, an NPO, and then it will enable us to, if people want to donate directly, we can support that. If companies want to sponsor, in terms of getting their logo up on a site, or if there's a thing where there's some kind of arrangement we come to where they can sponsor in return for us promoting their open source repos, whatever those arrangements are, they'll be managed, properly and transparently as part of a corporate structure.
Okay, cool. You mentioned companies there now. And so this is a bit of a two-part question, and feel free to answer it together, separately, whichever. But in your mind, if I am a solo developer or freelancer, or I work for a company, so I'm an individual, or I have a development company, or I'm management or top-level management at a development company, what is the benefit of getting involved in something like this? What would I get out of joining your community, possibly donating funds towards your community? What do you see as to use these sort of terms, the return on investment in putting some time and effort into getting involved in this?
For sure.
Okay.
So I'm going to claim this one to start. So you mentioned two effectively different personas there. You've got like the dev side of it, and then you've got the more company management side of it. So if you're wearing the dev hat, your value return on investment is much more community oriented. It's growing. It's your career path progression. It could be helping others out, mentoring, and like just being involved in that community as you grow. From things like contributing back to open source projects that the community might then be doing as a whole, or however that looks. The other side of it's a bit different, your company persona. So that's the kind of the grouping of people who'd want to target for all of our sponsoring and all of that side of things. And the value there is a bit different. So for example, if Wogan is wearing his Amberstone Digital company hat, the big value for him would be in line with, firstly, having a bigger community. If you grow South Africa's community, if you're a Laravel shop and you grow South Africa's Laravel community, you're obviously going to have more Laravel devs who are better skilled, and you've got more talent in the pool that you can start actually hiring from. So there's one part to actually building up the whole community as a whole from a company, depending on how big you are, obviously. And then there's also if you want to hire people, it can be quite hard hiring people. So having a profile where you can see people's involvement in a community is a pretty good indicator for a lot of stuff as well. So from a hiring point of view, there's that. From a branding and marketing the company point of view, if you were to put a logo on Laravel South Africa's website or whatever, that could be quite a value add from a marketing side. And a lot more of those kind of things. Wogan also mentioned one other thing which we were thinking of, which was if a company has an open source repo. that they want to help maintain, or they want maintenance on it, they could potentially pay to help, like for us to sponsor it as a Laravel South Africa sponsored repo, to help get more community involvement in an open source project. It's better, like for me, things like that would be like if you're like Payfast or whatever, building out wrappers in PHP, or a company building out their different thing in a wrapper. You want a language wrapper for it. You want a Laravel wrapper for it. Well, maybe ask the Laravel server community to sponsor the thing, and we can get some community members to help out or whatnot. So I think there's a lot of different things for the company value side, but most of them revolve around that kind of side of things, where it should end up being quite a large value add to the company. Mainly, I think, around talent and finding talent, to be honest.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't your mention of pay fast reset a timer somewhere?
It does. Oh my God, no, don't. It's been 0 days since we spoke about integrating Payfast.
For those of you who don't hang out on the Laravel channel in ZA Tech, that's a little bit of an in-joke. Cool. So I've had 2 questions so far that are kind of similar, so I'm going to bundle them together. But is there a website that folks can go to start getting information about this? Peter Engelbrecht asked, where can I direct my boss to find out more about this? Is there an online presence? Are you still building it out? Are you still in the process thereof?
I feel like answering a question for a change. So there is. At the moment, there is an extremely red landing page at laravel.org.za. And what we're doing is, because we're planning on building a bunch of stuff that, is custom and is kind of community oriented, the first decision we took was this is going to be open source. So there's actually an open source repo driving the site. The links are on laravel.org.za. And we have ideas for where we want to build it, and it's now just a question of finalizing the roadmap and committing time to it. In the interim, just to respond to Peter Engelbrecht's question, which I did respond in the live chat, but there will be a mailbox that we'll set up, for contacting stuff directly. But we're also going to be putting up pages to describe pretty much what we're talking about here. The value prop and everything else behind it, as we kind of build out the rest of the site, for which we do have an initial list of features. It's really just a question of whether or not John is updating his blog. Just because I like pushing that button. But also it really depends on community response, because we could, as very experienced Laravel devs, just knock this out. We can just go ahead and build it. But I first wanted to see if there would be interest in, from other people wanting to contribute some time, because in principle, I like the idea of a community site being actually built by the community. It forms part of a learning experience, and it will create a sense of shared ownership of the thing. If you know that you, as a community member, your code is driving, a certain piece of the site. But if that doesn't pick up fast enough, then we're just going to go ahead and build it, and make sure that we have a bunch of the initial things up, to start communicating what we're trying to do.
Okay, cool. So I don't actually know the answer to this, and that's why I'm asking. But how long have you been working on this?
I actually do have the answer to it. I need to find the notes that I took at our very first meeting, which will just take a second because I record absolutely everything in my life now.
Probably like me, because you have to.
The trick is to record it and then forget it.
Yes, exactly. So our initial meeting was on the 16th of June, and that was like the first main one that we ran.
Okay. So about 3-4 weeks in now.
Yeah, I would actually say about a month, because there was some conversations offline. But yeah, about a month.
Okay, cool. And what has it been like, specifically given the current circumstances? I mean, I don't think it would have changed how you built it, because from what my understanding is, you've been doing it sort of after hours. What has it been like, kind of getting together? What has the process been like? How have you found? Have you worked together before, and now suddenly you're having to figure all that out, or has that been an interesting journey?
Do you want to go first, John, or should I?
We haven't actually ever worked before, Wogan and myself, that I know.
Worked before? No, we're brand new, guys. We're brand new devs. Listen, we just found out about Laravel.
Okay. But we have totally been involved in ZA Tech community quite a bit. And we've both been at a couple of the Heidelberg meetups, which I've joined at. it's pretty far away though. It's pretty much a different country for me. I'm in Cape Town, so yeah.
Yeah, so
But no,
you
we
got
haven't
across
actually worked. We haven't actually worked on anything specific together. So far, it's been pretty chilled. Most of it's just been chats and planning it more organizationally and idea and vision plans than actual rubber hits the wheel work. Yeah, rubber hits the
Yeah.
road.
And in terms of how the process has been like, I mean, it started out as a bunch of informal chats on ZA Tech, and then, John showed some interest, Nick showed some interest, and then we basically just arranged a Google Hangouts meeting and decided to live stream it because why not? And those were how we started doing our conversations. So actually, our very first conversation is recorded on the Laravel South Africa YouTube channel, where we started planning the initial phases of this.
Cool. What would you say? So if we've got a bunch of people that are watching this now and commenting about the PayFast integration. What would you say are the areas where you would like to see people getting involved? Are there specific areas, or is it just a general come and join us and help us build this? Do you have any kind of thoughts around that?
I definitely do. So the core mission of this, which I did actually give you a short 2-sentence statement for, community organization focused on education, inspiration, and opportunity for developers using the Laravel PHP framework. That's who we are, what we're trying to be. On that note, I would actually bias the stuff that we build first against what the community thinks it needs most. So it's not a case of us setting the agenda and then, we're just going to YOLO and build a website. If we hear back from the community and the general thing is, there's specific content we need, or we have a bunch of questions and there's a bunch of themes that come out of that, this could start as a relatively simple blog type site. If we share the plans for the profiling system and people want to get involved with that quite eagerly, then that'll be the direction we go. But at least 50% of the decision weight depends on what the community will find most valuable fastest. And we have a range of things we can do, but it's going to, I think it's definitely going to rely on that in the initial phases.
Okay, cool.
So what someone could do to get involved and to help out at this point is probably just give us feedback. Feedback from you'd be excited to join the community, or your company would be excited to help sponsor, or things like what stuff we should focus on first, or anything like that. Just reaching out to us and letting us know what things you think are important most would be really useful and much appreciated.
Yep. To which end, this is one of the things that I think we didn't think about up front because we're so ZTech focused, or at least I am. We'll be setting up a shared mailbox for people to just email directly. I'll make sure that everyone on the team here gets it. And then we'll basically take it from there. So we'll gather some feedback, we'll process it, and then we'll have another live streamed call where we actually make the first set of plans. All of which will be, we're using GitHub's public projects thing for this. Everything is going to be done in public as much as possible. But early feedback is going to be the first step. And for that feedback, I would encourage you to think about, anything you wanted to know about Laravel but were too afraid to ask, type of deal. Even things that you don't. Things you've been stuck on in the framework down to very specific questions, because those are actually quite helpful. If we get a bunch of people saying that they've had challenges integrating with SOAP APIs or something like that, that gives us a roadmap for the first few pieces of content we can produce, which will add immediate value. So it'll be like a free-for-all mailbox. I think we'll just do it like hello@laravel.org.za, I think, just something like that. But we'll link it on the laravel.org.za website when it goes live.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So we don't have many questions from our audience currently. If anybody does have any questions that they want to throw our way, please do let us know. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep coming up with stuff. But the one thing that I sort of wonder about, and I'm going to kind of address let's call it the elephant in the room. But if you look at the conversation that we're having tonight, and from what I've seen of the streams that you've had so far, it's been a very homogenous group. So very, very white male intake. Have you thought about that? Is that something that is part of your process, or are you just wanting to see what the kind of feedback is like first? just curious to know your thoughts around that.
Cool. I have an answer, unless if John, you want to go first?
You're welcome to claim it. I'll add on if need be.
Cool. So couple of points. Number one, yes. I mean, the fact is right now, if you were to like kind of start with the total size of the hypothetical tech community in South Africa, it should be in the low millions of people that are doing something tech related. And this was born out of ZA Tech, which itself is on Slack, which means you need to know about Slack and go through the effort of like signing up on it and all the rest. And all of those things tend to act as filters for people that would much rather be on Facebook, or big communities and places like that. So, in doing this, the focus on community, I am anticipating that, as the reach of this grows, we're going to get, people from much more diverse backgrounds into this. And I'm actually like fingers crossed hoping, because especially when we start dealing with, people that are trying to kind of advocate for Laravel in large organizations like banks or insurance companies, those junior devs are more likely going to be non-white and non-male. I think just statistically speaking, that's what you're going to find. So, it is something that that I'm conscious of, and it's something that, we're going to push to address by being the most valuable community we can, for the Laravel framework. And it will be based initially on the feedback that we get. If I guess, and I think John might talk about this a bit more, but the notion of people feeling intimidated does include the notion of feeling excluded. If you show up on a site and there's a bunch of white faces and you're not white, it might seem a bit weird. So we will be conscious of things like that in the design of this community and this site.
Yeah, very much. I think our idea is to make it completely open and completely diverse with everyone. As Wogan mentioned, one of the bottleneckers so personally, I've got a lot of mates who aren't on Zelatech, and for various reasons. Sometimes it's just they don't really see the value, or they don't see any gain, or maybe it's because they don't like that group or that homogenous group or whatever. Or however it may be, there are definitely barriers to entry for that, and clicks that form because of that. So we're very keen to have this being completely open from the get-go. Try and be as open as we can to everyone, and we strongly encourage everyone to get involved and join the team. Yeah.
And I just actually, there was something else I forgot to kind of add to that, and it touches on several of the questions you've asked. Like why do this? Who benefits from it? Why would someone get involved? PHP is a pretty good framework, and it helps you be very, very productive as a web developer, all of which is very necessary skill growth if you're trying to grow your career. And I got to tell you, the impulse behind this, like I said, I was first thinking about this as a training thing, where it's just like I offer training, because underlying that is a deep and somewhat terrified dissatisfaction with South Africa's education system. We can talk about that one at length. But I've seen it for myself. There are people that make it through high school and university and into the corporate world, and they are not prepared for these challenges. And web development is a challenge in and of itself. Every language is a whole new thing you need to know. And so why it started as from the education aspect, and that's why education is the first objective in the mission, is people that know very little but want to learn, which will include most, I think, young South Africans. That's very close to my heart in terms of the way we structure this. So if we get feedback to the extent that, there's a bunch of young Black developers out there who don't really want to participate because everything's in English, maybe, or because they log onto the site and they don't feel like they're welcome, we will take that seriously, because our mission isn't really to, doing this community for the people that are already experienced and, Laravel devs and professional devs. We're singing to the choir there. Our specific explicit mission is to go out and extend the reach of Laravel, which means by definition, we have to reach people that aren't currently using the framework or don't have a lot of professional experience in coding. So that's, I think it does sound like quite an ambitious mission, which is why we're doing this. But I just wanted to kind of circle back to that one, that this is something that is like constantly front of mind for us.
No, that's great. I'll be honest, as somebody who who experiences both WordPress and Laravel every day. I would much rather new developers to PHP come to it via Laravel. So Jeffrey van Wyk has a question. Will Laravel South Africa have a separate meetup group, or will they use the PHP groups?
I think it depends entirely on how we scale. If we have a suddenly massive, huge group where we would drown out the other groups, then I think that becomes a problem. At which point it would make sense to make your own group. For now, we found that like we're still putting our feet in the door on it. So at the moment, it makes sense to incorporate with the other groups, with PHP Cape Town and all the different PHP side of things. Much like how the Laravel meetup group and the PHP meetup group often do combine things, just because you don't want too much. But the reason why there is a Laravel meetup group is because the PHP meetup group got very noisy with just Laravel stuff. So actually pull that out. So I think in the same vein, when we become too big and we start being a bit too noisy, and maybe in this group, we might pull it out. Realistically, I think that the PHP Cape Town group suffices pretty well. And then what might end up happening is the Laravel South Africa group might incorporate into the Laravel meetup groups, if anything. But yeah. I definitely wouldn't want it to encroach on the territory of other PHP frameworks, which are really cool and get used.
Cool, cool. Then Dominic had a question. Do you think that Laravel can penetrate the enterprise market, seeing that Java and C# have a stronghold in that sector?
Yes. And I say that because it's a good question, because there's this perception that, PHP is a toy language, and it's often, and I don't know, there's a spectrum of like playful mocking all the way down to denigration that gets taken seriously. And I think people have like kind of made PHP the butt of jokes for so long that you don't even really think about it as like a language that you could use in an enterprise environment. As I sit here, there are 3 different production systems in financial services firms that I've built using Laravel. It is absolutely enterprise capable. The bigger question is much more, do you have a team that knows how to use it, and can you actually hit your targets and your budget? Those are much more important questions than is it PHP or C#. So Dominic, the short answer is yes. Java and C# do have a stronghold in that sector because they have done for many, many years what we are now starting to do, which is we are trying to market Laravel as a solution to businesses for solving very specifically the enterprise web application question, because it is a good solution for that. PHP is. I don't know if you've seen PHP 8, the to-dos have kind of been published. Among other things, they keep expanding what the language can do. They're adding attributes for the first time, and they're actually turning PHP into a language that you wouldn't really be able to distinguish from Java in a few years in terms of what you can do with it. So the short answer is yes. I mean, the bigger question is, can we get developers who advocate for the use of Laravel because it's better at solving the sort of problems that companies need to solve? And then the language becomes sort of immaterial.
That's interesting. It's funny you mentioned that. And again, I'll just refer to my involvement in the WordPress community. But when I was at WordCamp Europe 2 years ago, somebody was doing a video on the WordCamp Europe conference, and they were asking everybody, what's your favorite thing about WordPress? What's your favorite? And almost everybody said the community. Community is huge. And that's why I love what you chaps are doing here, because you're building a community around this project, which will then help expand its reach, will help people have more places to go to. So I think that's super, super important. Hristo asks, what is your favorite Laravel feature? That's a nice one.
Yeah. I'm waiting for John to go first because I'm trying to like balance who speaks.
I think I'm probably going to go with Eloquent, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eloquent. Cool. Short, simple answer. I like it.
You could even say it was quite an eloquent answer.
Oh my God, no. It was a terse answer. That's what that was.
No, but on a serious note, not just eloquent, but the way that you can plug and play different things into Laravel. So, like, for example, on the ORM side, you could use eloquent, you could use Doctrine, you could use your own ORM. So much in the past, like, I mean, I came from a Magento world, from a framework where everything is coupled. You can't pull out almost anything. It's all directly attached. And going from that to Laravel was chalk and cheese, where you just like, you want to swap out your database connector and you just do it. You want to swap to using Redis, and it's just a env config, and that's all you need to do. So, I mean, I really enjoy Eloquent, but I think modularity is probably actually a better answer there.
Yeah. On my side, this isn't necessarily a feature, but more an architectural pattern. The fact that they built the framework to leverage all the work done by PSR to make Composer work, the fact that you can auto-discover packages and you can structure your code in such a way that if you know how to write PSR compliant code, which is a transferable skill in PHP, Laravel fits into that paradigm immediately. It's not like, I mean, I've used Yi, I've used CodeIgniter, I think I used Falcon PHP at one point, where what they do is they try to reinvent the basic architectural patterns for how to organize your code. And that adds overhead where if you are a very good Yi developer, a lot of that skill is Yi specific. It is not something you can just drop out. So, on one of the projects I worked on, I developed a module based PHP completely outside the framework, properly organized, properly namespaced. And when I just dragged the folder in and told Composer to find it, the whole thing was there and Laravel could use it. I have not been able to do that in any other framework. So I would say that the architectural consideration and the solid design in Laravel is by far my favorite feature. Everything else inside it is great and time-saving and very, very productive. But all of that doesn't really matter if you have to constantly struggle to fit your code into the framework.
It's a very good point. Jonathan Asperling says a good piece of content would be case studies where South African dev teams use Laravel to build epic stuff. Thoughts?
I think it's pretty cool. Talks that I've actually really enjoyed from Cape Town PHP meetup groups was, we did I think it was a Swift, no, not Swift. Oh, I'm going to botch this. There was some really great talks on scaling Laravel and different scaling problems you hit. And that for me was real insightful, because a lot of my work in the last couple of years have been doing quite extensive scale with Laravel. And it's a similar thing where, like, can Laravel do enterprise? Can Laravel actually scale? Like, PHP is really slow, right? Like, no, don't worry. Like, scaling it, PHP is seldom the problem when you're scaling. Like, that's not an issue. Yeah. Sorry, I can't remember what the question was.
So yeah, the question was, what are your thoughts on content, good content case studies where SA team devs use Laravel to build epic stuff?
Yeah, so I'm a very big fan. I think that both it scales bigger than we think it does, and seeing that in action is really useful. Like, I've gotten really great value from that exact thing from meetup group side. Would be a cool idea.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that I'm quite excited about this, because when I first got into Laravel about almost 4 years ago now, there wasn't a lot of local examples. So, everything was kind of what people are doing, in Europe or in the States. So I'm quite excited about, showcasing what's happening locally with Laravel and where it's going. This is a question more for myself, but I'm curious to know, so I come from, my first framework was Cape PHP. And then I'd experienced things like Yi and CodeIgniter and those kind of things. Do you see Laravel sticking it out for the long haul, or do you see there being something else that comes along and replaces it?
Good question. So that actually largely depends on the strength of the community behind the actual framework and language. Is one of the key kind of indicators. I think, look, Laravel stands a good chance in the long haul for two reasons. One, it is built, ultimately is built on PHP and it uses the best of PHP. So for as long as PHP is around, you're always going to have well-designed frameworks. I think Symfony and Zend would also fall in that category, alongside Laravel. And on that basis, yes, it's designed to last because it's coupled to the way the language itself works, which means it'll always keep pace. You're not going to have a situation. Earlier on in my career, when I started coding, my first actual professional web language was C#.NET. And I remember losing a few days worth of work because in the space of one upgrade, Microsoft upgraded Entity Framework from version 2 to version 3, and they completely changed like half the access patterns, and half the things I'd written didn't work anymore. And that was infuriating. I'm sure anyone who's done like a major upgrade on one of those languages will know you've got to rewrite a whole bunch of stuff. I'm convinced there are stories in the Python community about the 2 to 3 switch. But with PHP, code that you wrote 15 years ago would mostly still work today. It is basically the OG of backwards compatible, web-focused languages. So because of that, I think it has extreme durability, and because of Laravel's architecture, I think so does Laravel. So that would kind of be the best for my answer.
Cool.
That being said, I've actually been really excited by how PHP is actually depreciating some of its code.
Finally, yes.
Yeah, which has been really exciting. And it's also really exciting to see just how active the Laravel community is, from Taylor himself and actual core contributors being steps ahead of all the other changes. The fact that we're about to go to Laravel 8 soon as well is really exciting. I mean, not soon, but it's coming. Like the progression, like there's never been a time where I've wanted to move PHP versions ahead and Laravel hasn't supported it really yet. Like they keep those really well in sync, which is really exciting. Having languages which are stale or dying. I mean, today, as far as I know, yesterday was end of life of Magento 1. Like having languages actually die out and not being used anymore, or frameworks because of that, is really sad. And so far, we've seen the exact opposite with Laravel. Laravel's community has just been growing and growing in leaps and bounds. And what with the change to 7 and their semantic versioning upgrade, the Laravel updates that have been coming out, it's been flying fast and furious, which has been really cool.
Absolutely. Cool. I'm going to make this the last question from the viewers before we start wrapping up. Who has to ask any favorite package, or what is your most recently your favorite package? Can be Laravel specific, or just a package, a composer package in general.
You can't say your own one, by the way. That's cheating.
I don't think I actually have. No, I do actually have a package up on Composer that I haven't maintained in like a year. No, my favorite Laravel package by far would be Horizon, because I've done asynchronous queue processing in other languages, but I like the fact that Horizon just works out of the box, has a decent admin panel, has decent, threading. It's got the different strategies for that. It's the most effortless queue setup I've had in PHP, because I completely forget that in the absence of that, and you've got to start thinking about worker threads and stuff, that becomes a bit of a nightmare. But I will just, if I can add to that, because you did say package, I would also just point out my favorite service by far is Envoya for doing zero downtime deploys. It just works really, really well. But that would be my answer.
Cool. John?
I said there in the chat Livewire. It's been very new. It's been quite exciting working on it, and very different. It's definitely got a use case. I wouldn't replace everything with a Livewire app, but especially for a backend dev who wants to spin out a bit of front-end work, and not have to worry much about the front-end state management and all of that, Livewire has been really, really effective at what it does. Spinning up a simple app can be really, like the front-end wiring can be quite time-consuming, especially as a non-front-ender myself. Like that's the part I actually hate about building apps, is ever building a front-end. So from my side, being able to do all of that and have just know and trust that the state gets managed really well, it's been really exciting. And also just it's new, it's really cool, and it's some very interesting things which are being pushed out by Laravel community.
Cool. So we're hitting the, as they say on the radio, the top of the hour. We did run a little bit late, but I have to stick to my time, because otherwise my wife's going to chop bits off. So if folks want to follow you online, if you have, I don't know, a blog maybe, John, I don't know, where can people get hold of you?
ZTech is probably easiest, or sign up on the website on the Laravel South Africa, put your email address in there. That would be useful.
Yep, which is laravel.org.za. If you plug your email address in there, we'll just capture it. And when we have an actual site that goes up, you'll receive exactly one email from us saying that the site is up, and then we're going to delete your email address. Just, poppy compliance. I think I should actually update the site to say that. We are a very poppy compliant proto NPO. But I think it'll be that, or ZA Tech, the Laravel channel. You'll find us in there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Chas, thanks very much for joining me this evening. It was great finally meeting you both face to face. I mean, we had lots of chats in the various channels. It was nice. John, I've met before, but Wogan, nice to meet you face to face. I look forward to seeing where this goes. I will hopefully be able to join you in some of the future planning meetings. So far, it's just not been. And I'm looking forward to seeing where this is going.
Awesome. Thanks for getting us on board.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, guys. It was good.